Hello, this is an early years speech and language therapy tutorial. What do we mean by speech and language development? My name's Jo Colwell and I'm one of the early years speech and language therapists. This series of bite-sized tutorials is intended to give early years practitioners easy to access information in short chunks so you can get to know more about what speech and language therapists do, build your knowledge and understanding of children's communication development, and gain ideas about how you can help children develop these skills in your early years setting. First of all, I'm going to talk about what speech and language therapists do. Then we'll unpack what we mean by speech and language skills. And finally, I'll talk briefly about why communication skills are so important for children. Early years speech and language therapists support children's communication skills in different ways. For example, visiting children's centre stay and play sessions, providing training for early years practitioners on how to support communication development at nursery or preschool, and working in health centres or clinics with parents or carers and their children. It seems obvious that speech and language therapists help children to develop speech and language skills, but what does this actually mean? It's probably more accurate to talk about communication development, because this covers more of the areas of development that speech and language therapists are involved in supporting. Let's take a closer look at communication. Communication means learning new skills, such as how to interact with other people, how to pay attention and listen to others, how to understand what people are saying, and being able to talk to other people. We use the communication tree to explain how this develops. At the bottom, we have the roots. Motivation to communicate is the foundation for development of all communication skills and starts with adult-child interaction. A lot of early communication skills are non-verbal. That means we don't use words for them. The adult provides information about what the child hears, sees, and does, and helps the child to make sense of the world. The adult and child enjoy being together and want to understand each other. For example, when a baby hears an adult talking, the baby will turn their head towards them. Later, babies learn to look at the same thing an adult is looking at and start to point to things that they want their caregiver to look at. Then they look back at their caregiver to check they're looking at the same thing by making eye contact. This is called joint attention. Looking and listening develop alongside other skills. Without looking and listening skills, the child can't match the language they hear to what they're doing. This is the ability to look around and see what's happening, then focus on things that are interesting to them, then eventually to concentrate on activities that someone else wants them to do. Taking turns is being able to take part in a back and forward interaction. For example, you might play peekaboo with a baby, or take turns to put a brick on a tower with a toddler. For older children, this includes taking turns in games with other children their own age. From when they start learning to babble, babies are also learning to take turns in conversations. So you might notice that when a baby babbles, you say something to them and then they reply with more babble. Children continue to practice this as they learn more language and learn to take more turns until they can have long conversations. Next, we have play, which helps children to learn about the world around them. Children need to have lots of different experiences to help them learn language for thinking, learning, and communicating. Pretend play is really important because learning to use toys as symbols for real life, like learning that toy food can be used to pretend to eat, is linked to learning how to use abstract thinking and imagination, and children need these for language development. For example, at age 1, children typically learn to link objects to what they're used for, like knowing to use a brush for their hair. At 2, children can use 2 play steps together, like pretending to pour tea, then give it to Teddy to drink. Because play and language development are linked, many children with language difficulties also have problems with pretend play. Being able to share attention with an adult is a very important early language skill, and a child should be able to do this around the age of 1. By the time they start school, children should be able to listen to directions while focusing on a task. So children need to have motivation to communicate, be able to share attention with others, take turns, develop their play skills, and pay attention to what others are doing and saying. We think about all of these things before we start to think about a child's language skills. Understanding of language is the trunk of the tree. People often think that children understand much more than they do. This is because children are very good at understanding situations around them and the clues we give them, like facial expression, tone of voice, gestures, or copying others. But they might not be able to understand the actual words we're saying. Children need to understand a word before they can use it themselves with meaning. Children understand 5 times as many words as they can say between 2 and 3.5. Talking skills, which we sometimes refer to as expressive language, are the branches of the tree. Talking is the child's use of words and sentences. Before children learn to talk, they express themselves through non-verbal communication, like crying, cooing, babbling, facial expressions, pointing, and gesture. Children often say their first word around their first birthday. They typically use 2 words together at 2, 1,000 words at 3, and are fluent at 4. Speech sounds, or pronunciation, are like the leaves of the tree, or the tip of the iceberg. When we talk about speech, we are referring to the sounds we use to form words when we talk. Pronunciation is often the area of language that people notice first, but we have to look to see that all the foundations are in place before we think about supporting pronunciation. Speech sounds develop in stages, so you might meet a lot of 2-year-olds who can't say an S sound, and that's fine. The stages of communication development are interdependent, and each stage carries on developing as the child moves up to the next level. This tree helps us to see where a child might be having difficulty and where we can support them or offer them further stimulation. These skills also depend on having opportunities to communicate. For young children, this means having a parent or carer nearby to interact with throughout the day, and lots of chances to talk about different things they see and hear around them. Children also need specific praise about what they're doing. So you might say, "That was really good sharing with James," or "I like the way you said snail with a s sound." So why are communication skills so important for children? Communication skills mean that children can ask for things they want, refuse things they don't like, and express their ideas and feelings. Communication is essential for building relationships with family members and making friends in their community. Good spoken language skills are important for learning to read and write, and later good language skills are needed for learning at school and future employment.